Let's bring in North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer, who also sits on the Senate Banking Committee. Great person to have. Thank you, sir. So let's talk a little bit about that. Yeah, okay, woke, we get it. They made some mistakes on how they were, how they were laying off some of their risk on interest rates. But there are a lot of high-level Democrat operatives that are linked to these banks. Gavin Newsom being one with Silicon Valley Bank. That was surprising.
Well, it's problematic, isn't it? And this is why I think we should resist making knee-jerk responses until we know more about what happened at each of these banks, what were the fundamentals, how much of it is related to the upside-down situation relating to a fast spike in interest rates and deposits, how much of it's capitalization, how much of it is not. But it certainly does seem that there were some people there were asleep at the switch, whether it's management, board, perhaps Fed regulators, because it does appear there were some warning signs, acknowledged warning signs that weren't heeded in time to salvage these situations. And so there's just a lot that we have to learn, Eric, before we certainly jump to some sort of systemic solution to what might be a fairly localized problem.
Yeah, I'm not sure it is systemic. I'll tell you what the systemic issue is, and I've done 15 years on Wall Street prior to TV, Senator. When inflation was spiking off the charts, the Fed had to come in, as you point out, had to get aggressive with interest rate. None of this would happen if government spending wasn't out of control. We can point our finger at ground zero, and it's the massive amount of government spending over the last couple of years, is it not?
There's no question, Eric, that the chain of events begins with overspending. And then when we were already in what I think you have to consider a pretty hot economy coming out of the COVID pandemic. Now, there was a lot of stuff going on during the pandemic. I felt like we were building an airplane while we were flying it. We were taking a lot of counsel. That most of the big bills passed unanimously, and probably there should have been a little more slowing down and diligence at that time. But even the Federal Reserve, as you might recall, who doesn't like to weigh in, at least they say they don't, on policy issues, was saying Congress needs to spend more, Congress needs to spend more. But after all of that, a new president comes into office, and the first thing he does is he wants to get done on the act, passes in a straight party line vote this $2 trillion American Rescue Plan, follows that up with a nearly $1 trillion more, in the Green New Deal stuff, and quite honestly was just pouring fuel on the fire. So you're right, it all starts with a spike in inflation, which then led to the necessity of the Federal Reserve to do what they do, and that is raise interest rates in an effort to slow that down. But even while they were raising interest rates, the federal government was continuing to overspend, overtax, overregulate, hurt the supply side of the economy. So you really had forces working against each other, and then you had the fallout that we're experiencing now.
Yeah, Senator, very quickly though, it kind of plays into the Democrat hands. They overspend as a government. They ran the House, ran the Senate, and the White House for a while. Right. They overspend, inflation spikes, the Fed has to come in, raise interest rates, and banks start to fail because they didn't see it coming. And then they come back and say, we need more regulation. It plays right into their hand, doesn't it?
Plays right into their hand. That's the exact cycle that they love. Now, I think in this case, you've already pointed to some facts that already point right back at the Democrats, and the fact that they have a lot to say about a lot of these banks, that they're directly connected to some of these firms, that their regulators who don't like consolidation weren't allowing perhaps the purchase of SVB for sure, and perhaps others. So yep. If they get caught at this, and I expect that they will, then hopefully it splashes back on them a little bit and they change their behavior.
There you go.
But in the meantime, we have to prevent the panic. We have to prevent the panic.
I think we did, Senator. Always good having you on. I would like to spend more time with you talking, Wall Street banking and finance with you at another date. Really appreciate your time, Senator.
You bet.